So on my screen, I've got the same design, but in two different softwares. On the left-hand side, I've got it in Adobe Illustrator. So this is our vector editing software. On the right-hand side, I've got the same design in Photoshop. This is our Raster software. What I'm going to do is I'm going to zoom in real close so you can see the fine details of the Photoshop images. I've got my zoom tool. I'm going to click in towards the center, and you can see as I start to get closer what's happening. You can see the pixels. It's starting to get pixelated. Sometimes you'll hear people call these jaggies. So if you ever turn in an image or a photo that's really low resolution or low quality, they'll say, oh, I can see the jaggies. What they're saying is they're starting to see the little pixel dimensions that make up the individual image by itself. I'm going to hop into Illustrator, got my zoom tool. I'm going to zoom in on the same area, and you can see no matter how close I get to it, do you see the major difference between a vectorized image and a rasterized image? That's because this image on this side is made up completely out of points. I'm telling the computer where to start drawing and to stop drawing. So no matter what size it is, I can take a logo that's really small and blow it up, or I can shrink it all the way back down to really small. It's going to maintain the same amount of resolution and same amount of crispness that you would expect from the artwork. Now this is good for graphic designers because if you work for a business that gives you a logo, they want their logo to look good on absolutely everything that you do. So if you want it to look good really small on your business cards, you've got to be able to shrink it down. Then you've got to be able to blow it up and put it on the side of your building or put it on a billboard and still have it look good as well. So vector artwork allows you to do that, make it smaller and larger while still maintaining great quality. Here's another type of thing that happens just kind of from my own personal experience. Notice what you see in the rasterized image. You thought it was just a black and white image, but notice that there's a couple of more pixels that are gray on this side. The technical term for this is called anti-aliasing. It kind of is a way of tricking your eye. See, if it was just black and white, you would be able to really tell the difference, even at a distance, the edge of it. By giving it kind of that gray little border to it, it fools your eye into thinking that it's a little bit more of a continuous tone, so it anti-aliases that on there. If you're doing t-shirt design, this is very bad. If you gave a t-shirt to someone, how many of y'all have ever had to work on someone who made a t-shirt, like you're in maybe a social club or something? You know when you make t-shirts, you pay by the number of colors that you have on the shirt, right? So if you have a t-shirt, you only just want it to have white ink on the front, you're just going to pay for white ink. Well, if you sent this t-shirt design to somebody, you notice that it's not just black, it's got a little bit of shades of gray on there. Well, if you gave this to a t-shirt designer and they had to do what's called a color separation, they're going to pick up all these extra little colors that are inside of there. You don't want to be able to do this. This is why if you ever work for a t-shirt company or send artwork to them, they want their artwork put in vector format. It makes the color separation and makes rendering of it a whole lot easier and for them to be able to separate screens and give you a much better product to turn it in. I did a lot of work when I was in college for like Nina Musha and Laguna and all those social tribes, and they all turned in Photoshop files. So I'm just letting you know, if you can pass that on, send vector files, and it's a whole lot better. One downside, however, to using a vector file is you can't get those photographic quality results. I can't take a photograph of you and let it be a vector file by itself, because the photograph has to be broken up into those pixels. So everything you create in Adobe Illustrator is going to have that illustration type look. It's going to look like it's either cartoonish or it's going to have just an almost not realistic kind of feel to it. Now there are some advanced tricks, we're not going to get into them, that can make it look photorealistic. But for the most part, it's still going to be just vector art created from there. All good? Questions about that? Now you know everything about it there is to know for the two differences. Let's continue learning the software. So last time we learned about how to make basic shapes in Illustrator. You know that you can find these under your basic shapes tool. You can always click off and drag off this one. By the way, I didn't show you this very last little shape. This is a starburst tool. I have never found, and it makes little lens flares. You can click on it and then drag off. You know, sometimes if you take a photograph with your camera like towards the sun, it'll have like a lens flare behind it. This is just a quick way of doing that. I've never used this before. It's a tool I don't even teach how to use because you'll never use it. So goodbye with that. We also learned our selection tools and you've got two different types of selection tools. So if you create objects and you want to select the entire object, you've got your black arrow. You can click and drag it. You can also resize it by clicking on the outer edges. And you can also rotate it by moving your mouse outside of it. Then you've got your white arrow. This is your direct selection tool. This tool is special because it allows you to click on the individual points that you want to manipulate, and then you can change up your vector object that you're creating. Because remember, it's all about the points that you're creating from there. And again, if you ever need to delete something, all you got to do is select it, hit your delete key, and it's gone. The last thing that we learned was once you create a shape, so let's say I created a circle, it's going to have two important bits of data or things to keep in mind about it. It's going to have a fill color, so what color is it filled in with? In this case, it's black. And it's going to have an outline color, also known as your stroke color. Right now, the stroke color you can see has a little red dash going through it. That means it's a null color. It's completely invisible, completely opaque. If you wanted to add something, simply double click it. It'll bring up your color picker. Let's make it red. Right now the stroke is very, very thin, so if I wanted to make the stroke bigger, at the very top right hand side, you can increase it from there, and you can see the size of my outline is increasing for it from there. Now I'm going to show you how you can create your own freeform objects using really three different tools to work with. These are going to be your pen tool and also your pencil and brush tool. So I'm going to erase away this one. The pen tool, as the name would suggest, it looks like an old school writing pen. It's usually located next to your type tool. Works very simply. I'm going to zoom in, make my stroke a little bit smaller so we can see what we're working with. With the pen tool, all you have to do is click once, and it will start adding the points that you want to create for your vector objects. And so as long as I'm adding points, just clicking once, I can add straight lines to whatever I'm working with. And you can see, since I have black as my fill color, it's automatically connecting the first point and the last point with it. So as I click around, all I'm doing is clicking once. I'm making straight lines with my vector object. If I hover over the beginning point again, watch my cursor change. It's got a little zero or a little circle at the bottom right hand side. That means I can close off the point, and now it's one solid object from there. As with any other one, you can choose your selection tool and be able to drag around those points and further refine it. So if you got off a little bit, you can always go back and change them up. But that's how essentially you use the pen tool to create a freeform, straight-edged object. Everybody clear on that one? That's as simple as it's going to get. Well, let's make it harder. By the way, I just did something I should have shown you all about. Notice I've got this object selected because you can see the outline of it. If you ever want to deselect something really quickly, hit Shift, Command A, and it will deselect it. And so now I can start drawing another object. So that's kind of an interesting little tidbit to remember. Let me show you how you can make a curved point with your pen tool. So I've got my pen tool. I'm going to start off just by clicking once. You know, as long as I click one at a time, I can create straight lines. If I click and drag, however, I get these two little handles that come out. Do y'all remember what these handles were called? Oh, this is definitely going to be a question on the test. These are called Bezier handles. B-E-Z-I-E-R. Bezier handles allow you to control the curvature of the line that you're working with. Notice, however, when I click and drag, I've got two different handles that come out from a single point. This handle controls this curvature, and this handle will control the curvature of the next point when I click. I'm just going to click once, and it's going to continue out this curve down to here. So from here, click and drag. Now if I was to click again, notice there's no Bezier handle here, so I'm going to get a straight line. So let's try that again. I'm going to click and drag. Got two different handles. If I click again, it's going to continue on from that. Click and drag, make a new one. I can click and drag again if I wanted to, get two Bezier handles controlling the same type of curve. You can see it starts to get pretty funky the more curves that you get. But as soon as I stop clicking, then they'll go straight back to making straight lines from there. Y'all get plenty of practice creating these. But you can see very easily, very quickly, I can make whatever freeform shape that I want to that's not one of the pre-made shapes. I want to hit Command A to select everything, select all, and delete those. So, straight lines, all you got to do is click, 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 and click. Curved lines, click and drag, and it'll curve up those lines. Remember, it's going to drag over for this one. Here's another advanced technique to keep in mind. Let's say I'm going to delete this one, start over. I'm going to start off here. I'm going to click and drag. Now, I told you if I click again, it's going to continue on with this curve. What happens if I wanted to go straight down from here? In other words, I wanted a straight line from this one, and I don't want this Bezier curve. Here's how you can get rid of this next Bezier handle. If you'll click on it again, notice that my little icon has a little triangle under it now. If you click on this object, or excuse me, this point again, it's going to erase that curve. Now I can go straight from that next one. So if I clicked and drag, if I did it, just clicked out here, it's going to curve it, not what I want. Click and drag, click again. Now I can go straight down from there. Pretty cool? So that's how you can control your Bezier curves that you're working with. Click and drag, delete. Makes it go straight, click and drag, around from there. I will show you some other little tools that are underneath your pen tool. If you'll click and hold, there's an add anchor point, delete anchor point, and convert anchor point tool that's in here. As the name would suggest, if you need to add any anchor points to an object that you have, you can use this one. It's got a little plus sign. So if I needed one, say, to be right here, I can click on the point, on the line, and now I've added a small little anchor point right there in the center. I can then choose it, drag it off, and adjust my line from there. If I needed to erase an anchor point, that's where the delete comes in handy, so let's get rid of this one. Just by clicking on it, it'll delete away that one and then connect the line back in between those two. So as long as I'm clicking on them, it'll erase away the points that I've already created. This last one, if you click and hold, convert anchor point, it'll take any point that is a straight edge point, so in other words has no Bezier curves, and if I click and drag on it, it'll create some Bezier curves from a straight edge point from there. And that's what the convert anchor point will allow you to do. Also, this one's really cool. If I wanted to, notice how these are kind of parallel, they'll copy each other. If I click just on this Bezier handle, it'll move only that one, and it'll keep the other one exactly the same. So now I can create a curve that looks kind of like this from there. Pretty cool? Awesome. Any questions before I move on from that one? Because that's the main tool that is really used in Illustrator. In Photoshop, you would use your paintbrush. In Illustrator, the pen tool is really the workhorse. All you gotta do is click, click, click. I've been doing this for 10 years, and so I kind of start doing stuff without thinking about it. This is one that's just going to take a lot of practice to get used to. Fortunately, you're going to get a lot of practice in here to create something. Let me show you another tool. Rather than just clicking all the way around, it would be great if I could just free draw on my canvas and have the computer do the work for me. Here's two tools that allow you to do that. There's the pencil tool, and there's also the paintbrush tool. The pencil tool, if you don't see it, there's some other little tools underneath it. This is the main one we're going to use. With this one, I can click and drag around. You can see when I start to draw, you'll see a little kind of a blue dotted line following me. The computer is tracking wherever I move my mouse, and as long as I hold down my mouse, it'll start to track it. When I let go, it'll automatically draw off the curves and the lines that I created, and you can see it's filling it in. Let's get rid of my fill. I'm going to choose fill, choose that one. I should choose the object first. There we go, and get rid of it. And so that's all the pencil tool will allow you to do. Just click and free draw whatever you need, and it'll draw from there. You can still use your direct selection tool and click on the line and then further refine the line. So if you're off by a little bit, you can always move it around, adjust your Bezier curves, make it look really good, that sort of thing comes in handy from there. So y'all kind of get an idea of how vector works. It's a little bit different. In Photoshop, if you drew that line, you wouldn't be able to move it around just as you would move this one around. In Illustrator, you're able to move your line around because the computer is doing the drawing for you. By the way, some of these other tools that are under here, the smooth tool, if you've ever taken a drawing class, you'll know what a paper stump is. How many of y'all know what a paper stump is? Oh man, y'all got to take a drawing class. If you ever want to smooth out an area, you take a rolled up piece of paper, and that's what this is supposed to represent. And let's say I wanted this line to be super smooth, so I can rub over it, and it'll start to, let's get a better area, it'll start to kind of smooth out my line that I'm working with. These are already smooth enough. Let's see, try a pencil tool. So if I drew like a super jaggedy line, like that one, grab your smooth tool, select your line, and then you can smooth out those edges. You can see now they're starting to become really rounded on that side. Also, as the name would suggest, you got a path eraser tool. You can select your path, and then, there we go, start erasing over it and erase away the line that you're working with. Sometimes it doesn't decide to work. There we go, from there. Those are pretty much intuitive to use with. The last one is your brush tool. Now this is a special one. Let's see, doesn't have any thing underneath it. With the brush tool, we're going to play with this one in a couple more lessons. You'll need to have your brush swatches open. There's a palette on the right hand side called your brushes. I'll drag them off. The brush tool will mimic traditional type media. So for instance, if I wanted something to look like a calligraphy pen, or if I wanted something to look like this charcoal type of effect, I can choose the charcoal brush and then click and drag around, and just like the pencil tool, it'll track my motion, and when I let go, you can see it kind of creates that charcoal kind of like effect if you were to drag off a paintbrush or something around it. We'll get more into using the paintbrush tools, but just know that that's what the paintbrush tool allows you to do. It mimics real world type drawings from there, and you can still move it around since it's all vector to work with. All good? Pretty cool? Let's see. For today, oh, let me show you one more thing. However, I'll go ahead and just tell you what our exercise is today. This is going to be kind of fun. I want to give you plenty of practice with the pen tool. How many of y'all played Mario growing up? Anybody have a Super Mario system? Okay, that was, man, I feel so old right now. Like, I grew up on Super Mario. I didn't even have an N64. Like, for me, it was 18-bit graphics. What I want you to do is use your pen tool. I want you to set your fill color to none. We're just going to use a thick red stroke. So I'm going to change my stroke color to red, and I'm going to bump it up to usually about 3 or 4 will be okay. We're going to start right here, and you're going to move all the way along from coin to coin and practice making lines from one point to the next one. So I'm going to zoom in by the way Command + sign will zoom us in. Start off simple. Click once right in the middle of the coin, and then click again, and it will create the line from one to the other. If it's off by a little bit, that's okay. The main purpose is that you're following one to the other. So when you get down here and you see this one's a curved line, what do I got to do? Click and drag. There you go. Click and drag until your line matches up with that one. That's pretty close. So all I've got to do is click here, and you can see it completes out that particular curve. Same way for this one. Click and drag. Now this is a straight line, so what do I need to do for the straight line? Bingo. Click this point again. It'll erase away that Bezier curve, and then you can go straight from there. What I want you to do is just practice, click and drag, click again, completely going through the entire line sequence all the way to the top left-hand side till you get the one-up mushroom from there. All cool? Very good. Let me show you that last little technique that'll help you out. Remember, we're creating a Vectobot. You're creating your own little robot. Let's see if I can open up, had mine saved. No, didn't have it saved. And so you want to be able to create the basic shapes and copy them over. I showed you last time. Actually, let me see if I can find mine, because that will help you out. There we are. So I've got my Vectobot template. I'm going to drag him into here. Making a little robot that has an eye, a head, a nose, mouth, using all your basic shapes, whatever color you want to come up with. So I showed you that if you wanted to make one eye, of course that's made up of circles, so I'm going to quickly recreate the eye. Let's give it a thicker stroke. Fill color, let's make it gray. And the last thing I need to do is give it a little inside white area. I'm going quick just so I don't take up your time. From there. So now I've got two different objects that I'm creating. To drag these over, remember if you want to select both of them, all you've got to do is click on one, hold down Shift, and you can click on the other one and they're both now selected and you can move them both together. Here's an even better trick to know. With them both selected, go up to Object and choose Group. And what it's going to do is it's going to look at the little white circle on the inside and the bigger circle, and it's going to act as if they were one object by themselves. So I'm going to group them together. So even if I deselected them, all I've got to do is click on this one, and I can quickly copy it over and move it to wherever I need. I don't have to select both of them at the same time. Pretty good? That's what grouping two objects will allow you to do. Here's another great thing to know. Let's say I wanted to quickly make a copy of another eye. Of course, I can always go to Edit, Copy, and Edit and Paste again, and it'll paste another copy over there. I'm going to get rid of that one. Here's the fast way of doing it. Hold down your Option key, and when you click and drag, notice I've got a double arrow, it's automatically going to make a copy from there as well. So all I've got to do is hold down Option, click and drag, and it's copied. I can select all three of those. Hey, I can group those three of them together now. So now if I wanted all three to be quickly selected, all I've got to do is click on one of them and start making copies from there. Pretty cool? Awesome. I'm going to give you all time the rest of today to finish up the coin roundup one. This one you're going to save as an Illustrator file, excuse me, and then you can finish up your Vectobot. That one's going to be printed to the color printer. If you have any problems or questions, just let me know. Alrighty, turn it over.